The pre-dawn darkness of Chicago pressed against the windows of the Sterling Tower as Maya Rodriguez pushed her cleaning cart through the marble lobby. At 28, her hands already bore the roughness of a woman twice her age. Cracked knuckles, calloused palms, the price of scrubbing other people's floors since she was 19. Her black hair, pulled into a tight bun, revealed the perpetual worry lines etched across her forehead, worry lines that seemed to deepen with each passing month. But none of that mattered when she thought of Sophia. 3-year-old Sophia, with her wild curls and eyes like melted chocolate, who would never hear her mother's voice, who would never hear the words, "I love you," spoken aloud, only see them signed with tired hands at the end of each grueling shift. Maya's daughter had been born deaf, and in the 2 years since the diagnosis, Maya had learned sign language through free YouTube videos on a cracked phone screen, practicing in bathroom mirrors during her 15-minute breaks. The diagnosis had come with a price tag Maya couldn't fathom: $75,000 for cochlear implant surgery. The number haunted her dreams. She worked 3 jobs, cleaning offices at night, waitressing during breakfast hours, and doing laundry for a local hotel on weekends. Even then, she'd only managed to save $3,200 in 18 months. At this rate, Sophia would be in college before Maya could afford the surgery. This particular morning, Maya's shift at Sterling Tower started at 4 a.m. She preferred the early hours when the building was empty, when she didn't have to feel the weight of invisible eyes judging her worn sneakers or secondhand uniform. The Sterling family's private penthouse floors were her responsibility, a job she'd gotten through her cousin Maria, who worked in the building's mail room. It paid $2 more per hour than her previous position, and Maya treated those floors like sacred ground. She was on the 48th floor, polishing the Brazilian walnut panels outside the executive offices, when her phone buzzed. Her heart seized. Her neighbor, Mrs. Chun, only called if there was an emergency with Sophia. Maya's hands trembled as she pulled the phone from her pocket. "Maya, I'm so sorry to call, but Sophia, she has a terrible fever. It came on so fast. She's burning up, and she won't stop crying. I gave her the infant Tylenol from your cabinet, but I think she needs a doctor." The phone nearly slipped from Maya's grip. Sophia had been fighting a cold all week, but it had seemed manageable. Now fear clawed at Maya's chest. "I'm coming. I'm leaving right now." No, you'll lose your job. I called that clinic on Madison the urgent care. They open at 6. I can take her." "How much?" Maya interrupted, her voice hollow. She already knew the answer would hurt. The receptionist said $200 minimum without insurance, probably more if they need to run tests. Maya's vision blurred. She had $143 in her checking account. Her credit cards were maxed. Payday wasn't until Friday, 3 days away. She stood frozen in the pristine hallway, surrounded by wealth she couldn't comprehend, while her daughter suffered 3 miles away. "I'll figure it out," Maya whispered. "Keep her comfortable. I'll be there in an hour." She hung up and pressed her forehead against the cool wood paneling, fighting the sob building in her throat. She couldn't cry. Crying was a luxury she couldn't afford. She needed to think, to plan, to somehow manifest $200 in the next 2 hours. A desperate idea flickered in her mind. There was a company emergency fund, $500 available for employees facing hardships. She'd never asked for help before, had never wanted to draw attention to herself or seem needy. But this was Sophia. Pride meant nothing when your child was suffering. Maya hurried to the service elevator, her cart forgotten. The building manager's office was on the 3rd floor. Mr. Patterson would be in by 5:30 a.m. She could explain, could beg if she had to, could promise to work extra shifts to pay it back. Surely he would understand. Surely someone would help. But when the elevator doors opened on the 3rd floor, Maya's hopes crumbled. A printed notice was taped to Mr. Patterson's door. Emergency leave. Family matter. Return date, November 15th. That was 2 weeks away. The sob finally escaped. echoing in the empty hallway. Maya covered her mouth with her hand, sinking onto the cold floor. She'd failed. After everything, all the sacrifice, all the endless work, all the nights sleeping 4 hours so she could make enough money, she couldn't even afford to take her sick child to a doctor. Her phone buzzed again. Mrs. Chun. Her temperature is 103.5. Maya, I'm worried. With shaking hands, Maya Googled emergency loans near me. The results made her stomach turn. Payday loan sharks with 400% interest rates that would trap her in debt for years. But what choice did she have? She was about to click on the first result when the elevator dinged. Maya scrambled to her feet, wiping her eyes, trying to compose herself. No one could see her like this. She couldn't afford to lose this job on top of everything else. But the man who stepped out wasn't a security guard or early morning executive. It was Alexander Sterling himself. At 31, Alexander Sterling commanded every room he entered. Forbes had just ranked him as the 14th richest person in America, his tech innovations having revolutionized cloud computing. He wore a Tom Ford suit that cost more than Maya made in 6 months, and his dark hair was perfectly styled despite the early hour. He carried a leather briefcase and was focused on his phone, probably reviewing stock reports or planning his next billion-dollar acquisition. Maya pressed herself against the wall, hoping to be invisible. People like Alexander Sterling didn't notice people like her. She was part of the building's machinery, as unremarkable as the vacuum cleaner in her cart. But then he looked up, and his sharp blue eyes locked onto her face. "You're crying," he said, and something in his voice was unexpectedly gentle. Maya frantically wiped at her cheeks. "I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling. I'll get back to work immediately." "Wait." He stepped closer, and Maya noticed the concern in his expression. "Are you all right? Has something happened?" Every instinct screamed at her to lie, to protect herself, to maintain the invisible wall between their worlds. But the weight of Sophia's fever, the impossible number in her bank account, the crushing exhaustion of 3 years fighting alone, it all broke through her defenses. "My daughter," she whispered. "She's 3. She's deaf and she's sick, running a high fever, and I don't have enough money to take her to urgent care." "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll go back to work. Please don't fire me." And Alexander Sterling did something that would change both their lives forever. He didn't walk away. Alexander Sterling had built his empire on reading people, anticipating market trends, identifying talent, spotting opportunities where others saw obstacles. But standing in that fluorescent-lit hallway at 4:47 a.m., looking at the cleaning woman with desperate eyes, he wasn't thinking about business. He was thinking about his sister. Olivia had died when Alexander was 16, and she was 12. Leukemia. He remembered his parents' anguish, their willingness to sell everything they owned for experimental treatments. Back then, the Sterling family hadn't been wealthy. His father was a public school teacher, his mother a nurse. They'd mortgaged their house 3 times. It hadn't been enough. Olivia had died in a hospital bed, holding Alexander's hand, while their parents signed papers confirming they were now $400,000 in debt. That grief had driven Alexander to his first invention, to building his first company, to every risk he'd taken since. He'd become wealthy not for himself, but so he would never again be powerless when someone he loved needed help. And now this woman, this stranger whose name he didn't even know, stood before him in that same kind of desperate powerlessness. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Maya Rodriguez, sir. I've worked here for 7 months. I'm never late. I've never missed a shift. Maya," he interrupted gently. "What's your daughter's name?" The question seemed to surprise her. "Sophia." "And what's wrong with Sophia right now?" Maya's voice cracked as she explained, the fever, the urgent care clinic, the $200 she didn't have. As she spoke, Alexander noticed details he'd walked past 100 times without seeing. The worn soles of her shoes, the way her uniform had been carefully mended at the seams, the calluses on her hands. This woman worked herself to the bone, and it still wasn't enough. My neighbor is with her now, Maya finished. I just needed to ask my manager about an emergency fund, but he's on leave, and I don't know what to do. I'm sorry to burden you with this. You have important things to worry about. More important than a sick child? Alexander pulled out his phone. What's the name of the urgent care clinic? Madison Street Urgent Care, but Mr. Sterling, I couldn't possibly. He was already dialing. Yes, this is Alexander Sterling. I need to speak with your office manager immediately. His tone was crisp, businesslike. After a brief pause, I'm calling regarding a patient who will be arriving within the hour. Sophia Rodriguez, age 3. I want her seen immediately by your best pediatrician, and I want every necessary test run. I'll be covering all expenses directly. Yes, all of them. I'll send my assistant's contact information for billing. Maya stared at him, her mouth slightly open, tears streaming freely now. Mr. Sterling, I can't. That's too much. I could never repay. You're not repaying anything. This isn't a loan. He texted his assistant, copying her on the arrangement, then looked back at Maya. Go. Get your daughter to that clinic. They're expecting her. I don't understand, Maya whispered. Why would you do this for us? Alexander thought of Olivia's laugh, the way she used to sign "I love you" to their mother even before her hearing loss from the chemotherapy. Because I can, he said simply. And because you asked for help. That takes courage. Maya wiped her eyes with her sleeve. Thank you. God bless you, Mr. Sterling. Thank you so much. She turned to leave, but Alexander called after her. Maya, wait. You said Sophia is deaf. Yes, sir. She was born with profound hearing loss. Maya's voice filled with that particular pain that comes from loving someone you can't fully help. She needs cochlear implants, but the surgery costs $75,000, and I've only saved $3,200 in 18 months. At this rate, she trailed off, the math too depressing to complete. Alexander's expression shifted into something Maya couldn't quite read. What's her phone number? She rattled it off, confused, watching as he saved it in his contacts. Someone from my office will call you tomorrow, he said. Now go take care of Sophia. And Maya, don't come to work tonight. Take the rest of the week off. Paid. But that's not a request. It's an order. Your daughter needs you. Maya wanted to argue, to explain that she couldn't afford to miss work, that she had bills and rent, and the mounting medical expenses. But something in Alexander's eyes told her this was not a negotiation. So she simply nodded, whispered another tearful thank you, and rushed to the elevator. Alexander stood alone in the hallway after she left, his scheduled morning feeling suddenly trivial. He was supposed to review acquisition proposals, attend a breakfast meeting with potential investors, and sit through 3 hours of product development presentations. All of it felt hollow. He pulled out his phone and called his personal assistant. Jessica, clear my morning schedule. Sir, you have the Waverly Capital meeting at 7. Reschedule everything. I need you to compile information on cochlear implant surgeons in the Chicago area. The best ones, I don't care what they charge. And I need background on one of our cleaning staff, Maya Rodriguez. Employment history, current situation, any red flags. Of course, sir. May I ask? I'm considering helping her daughter get necessary medical treatment. I need to understand the full picture first. Jessica paused. Alexander could almost hear her recalibrating. She'd worked for him for 6 years and knew he was intensely private with his philanthropy. I'll have the information to you within 2 hours. 1 hour, Alexander corrected, then softened his tone. Please, Jessica. It's for a sick 3-year-old. Understood, sir. 1 hour. Alexander headed to his office on the 52nd floor, but he couldn't focus on the stack of contracts waiting for him. Instead, he found himself researching childhood deafness, cochlear implants, success rates, optimal age for surgery. He learned that the earlier the intervention, the better the outcomes for language development. Sophia was already 3 in the critical window, but time was slipping away. He thought about Maya working 3 jobs, saving for 18 months, and barely making a dent in what she needed. The system was broken, he thought angrily. A single mother doing everything right, working herself to exhaustion, and still unable to afford basic medical care for her child. 58 minutes later, Jessica emailed him the file on Maya Rodriguez. Alexander read it carefully, looking for any indication that this was a scam, that Maya was anything other than what she appeared to be. What he found instead broke his heart. Maya had been working since she was 14, helping support her family after her father was deported. She'd gotten pregnant at 24, and the father had disappeared the moment he learned about the pregnancy. She'd continued working until the day before Sophia was born, then returned to work 2 weeks later because she couldn't afford more time off. When Sophia was diagnosed as deaf at 14 months, Maya had taught herself sign language while working 3 jobs. She had no family support, no savings, no safety net. And yet, according to her employment records, she'd never once been late, never called in sick, never complained. Her supervisors at all 3 jobs described her as hardworking, honest, and dedicated. One note from her weekend job supervisor read, "Maya is the most reliable employee I've ever had. She once worked a 12-hour shift with a broken toe because she didn't want to leave us short-staffed." Alexander closed the file and stared out his floor-to-ceiling windows at the Chicago skyline. He'd built this empire to have power, power to never be helpless again, power to change outcomes, power to make things right when the world was cruel. What good was any of it if he didn't use it to help people like Maya? His intercom buzzed. "Sir, I have Dr. Patricia Chun on line 1. She's the top cochlear implant surgeon in Midwest. She can speak with you now about the Rodriguez case." Alexander picked up the phone. "Dr. Chun, thank you for making time. I need to understand the process for cochlear implants in a 3-year-old patient." The conversation lasted 40 minutes. By the end, Alexander had a complete picture of what Sophia needed: preoperative assessments, the bilateral surgery itself, months of post-operative therapy and auditory training. Total cost, with the best possible care, $185,000. Dr. Chin could fit Sophia into her schedule within 3 weeks if they moved quickly. $185,000. A rounding error in Alexander's budget. A literal impossibility for Maya. He sat back in his chair, thinking. He could simply write a check, have Jessica handle the arrangements, move on with his life. It would be easy, clean, impersonal. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way Maya had looked at him in that hallway, not with the calculating interest he usually saw from people who knew his net worth, but with genuine, raw desperation. She hadn't been asking for money. She'd been about to sell her financial future to a predatory lender to save her daughter. And that sign she'd made with her hands before leaving the elevator, he'd recognized it from his sister's illness. "I love you." Alexander made a decision that would surprise everyone who knew him. He wasn't going to handle this through intermediaries. He was going to help Maya directly, personally. Because Sophia deserved more than a rich stranger's check. She deserved to know that someone cared. He just had to figure out how to offer that help without making Maya feel like charity. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Sterling, this is Maya Rodriguez. Sophia is being seen now. Her fever is 103.1, and they're running tests for infection. The doctor is kind and thorough. I cannot thank you enough for this gift. You saved us today. I will never forget your kindness. M." Alexander stared at the text for a long moment, then saved her number under Maya, Sophia's mom. He had no idea that saving a sick child from one urgent care visit would lead to the most important relationship of his life. All he knew was that this morning he'd walked into his building as one kind of person, and he was leaving it as someone slightly different. Someone who'd remembered why he'd fought so hard to escape poverty in the first place. Someone who'd been given a chance to make Olivia proud. 3 days later, Maya stood outside the Sterling Tower's main entrance at 2 p.m., her heart hammering against her ribs. Sophia clutched her hand, wearing her favorite purple dress, the nice one Maya had been saving for special occasions. The little girl's fever had broken after 2 days of antibiotics for the ear infection the urgent care doctor had diagnosed, but she still seemed tired, her head resting against Maya's leg as they waited. Maya had received a call yesterday from someone named Jessica Warren, Mr. Sterling's assistant, asking if she could bring Sophia to meet Mr. Sterling at his office. The request had been phrased politely, but Maya couldn't shake the anxiety. Why would a billionaire want to meet her 3-year-old daughter? Was this about repayment? Had she somehow overstepped? She'd almost canceled 3 times, but something in Jessica's warm voice had reassured her. Mr. Sterling specifically asked to meet Sophia. He'd like to discuss some things with you, but it's nothing to worry about. He just wants to help. Now, standing in the gleaming lobby where she usually arrived in darkness, Maya felt profoundly out of place. She wore her one good outfit, a simple navy dress she'd bought at Goodwill, paired with the only shoes she owned without scuff marks. Sophia, at least, looked perfect, her curls bouncing as she watched the lobby's indoor waterfall with wide-eyed wonder. "Excuse me, are you Maya Rodriguez?" A polished woman in her 40s approached with a kind smile. "I'm Jessica. It's so nice to finally meet you." Maya shook her hand nervously. "Thank you for arranging this. I hope we're not taking up too much of Mr. Sterling's time." "Not at all. And this must be Sophia." Jessica crouched down to the little girl's level, waving with a gentle smile. Sophia, who'd been wary of strangers since the ear infection, surprised Maya by waving back and signing hello. She'd just signed hello. Maya translated automatically, then felt foolish. Of course, Jessica wouldn't understand sign language. But Jessica's eyes lit up. "Actually, I caught that. My nephew is deaf, so I know some basic signs." She turned to Sophia and signed back. "It's nice to meet you, Sophia." Sophia's face transformed with joy. She rarely met adults who could sign. She immediately started signing rapidly, telling Jessica about the waterfall and how pretty it was. Maya's throat tightened with emotion as she translated Sophia's excited gestures. This simple act of being understood meant everything to her daughter. "Well, Sophia has excellent taste," Jessica said warmly. "That waterfall cost $200,000. But I think she's the first person to really appreciate it." She stood up and gestured toward the elevators. "Shall we head up? Mr. Sterling is looking forward to meeting both of you." The ride to the 52nd floor was silent except for Sophia's occasional exclamations, signed with animated hands, about how high they were going. When the elevator doors opened, Maya was struck by the understated elegance of the executive floor. No harsh fluorescent lights here, just soft natural lighting and warm wood tones. Alexander Sterling was waiting in the reception area, and Maya was startled to see him dressed casually in dark jeans and a simple gray sweater. Somehow, it made him seem more approachable, more human. "Maya," he greeted her with a genuine smile, then looked down at Sophia. "And you must be Sophia." The little girl studied him with solemn curiosity, then hid partially behind her mother's leg. "She's a bit shy with new people," Maya apologized. "Understandable. I'm basically a stranger." Alexander crouched down, putting himself at Sophia's eye level. Then, to Maya's absolute shock, he signed, "Hello, Sophia. My name is Alexander. I'm a friend of your mama's." Sophia's eyes went round to saucers. She looked up at Maya, who was equally stunned, then back at Alexander. Slowly, she signed back. "You can talk like me?" Alexander smiled. "I'm learning. My sister taught me some signs when I was younger, but I'm rusty. Will you be patient with me?" Sophia nodded enthusiastically, then signed. "Your hands are very slow, but that's okay. You're nice." Maya had to cover her mouth to hide her laugh. "She says you're slow but nice." An accurate assessment, Alexander said, standing back up. Please come into my office. I have some things I'd like to discuss, and I thought Sophia might enjoy some activities while we talk. He led them into a massive corner office with panoramic views of Chicago. But what caught Sophia's attention immediately was a corner of the room that had been transformed into a child's paradise. There were puzzles, building blocks, art supplies, and several educational toys specifically designed for deaf children, visual, tactile learning tools that Maya had researched but never been able to afford. I hope this is all right, Alexander said, watching Sophia's reaction. Jessica helped me choose age-appropriate items. I thought Sophia might like something to do while we talk. Sophia looked up at Maya with pleading eyes, signing. Can I play, Mama? Of course, sweetheart. Maya signed back, and Sophia immediately ran to the corner, gravitating toward a light-up building set. Maya turned to Alexander, emotions overwhelming her. Mr. Sterling, this is… I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything. Please sit. He gestured to a comfortable seating area away from his imposing desk. Can I get you anything? Coffee, tea, water? I'm fine, thank you. Maya perched on the edge of the sofa, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Alexander sat across from her, his expression serious but kind. First, I want to ask about Sophia. How is she feeling after the urgent care visit? Much better. The antibiotics worked quickly. The doctor said her ear infection was quite severe if we'd waited even another day. Maya's voice caught. You saved her, Mr. Sterling. I can never repay you for that. I don't want repayment. I want you to understand something, Maya. Alexander leaned forward, his blue eyes intense. What happened in that hallway the other morning, it affected me. I spent the last few days thinking about you and Sophia, about your situation. And I want to help more than just covering one urgent care visit. Maya's stomach dropped. Mr. Sterling, I can't accept charity. I've worked my whole life, and I've never asked anyone for. This isn't charity, he interrupted gently. Or maybe it is, I don't know the right word for it. But I've done research about cochlear implants. I've spoken with the best surgeon in the region. Sophia's at the perfect age for intervention, but that window is closing. Every month you wait makes the outcome less optimal for her language development. Tears pricked Maya's eyes. I know all of this. I read every article, every study. I know I'm running out of time, and I know I'm failing her by not having the money. You're not failing her, Alexander said firmly. The system is failing you. You work 3 jobs. You've saved every penny. You've done everything right, and it's still not enough. That's not your fault. But what can I do? Maya whispered. I've applied for every grant, every program. Sophia doesn't qualify because we're not quite poor enough. I make just barely too much. But we're not stable enough for payment plans. I'm stuck in this impossible middle ground. Alexander was quiet for a moment, watching Sophia play with the light-up blocks. She'd built a tower and was signing to herself, telling herself a story about a princess in a tall castle. What if there was another way? He said finally. Maya looked at him warily. What do you mean? I want to fund Sophia's surgery. Completely. The best surgeon, the best hospital, the best post-operative care and therapy. Everything she needs for the best possible outcome. Maya shook her head immediately. No, I can't accept that. It's too much. We're talking about $75,000. Actually, for bilateral implants with the best care, we're talking about $185,000. The number hit Maya like a physical blow. She actually felt dizzy. That's impossible. I could never save that much. But I can write that check this afternoon and not miss it, Alexander said quietly. Maya, I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. What good is it if I don't use it to change lives when I can? But why us? Maya asked, tears streaming down her face now. You don't know us. We're nobody to you. You're not nobody. Alexander's voice was thick with emotion. You're a mother doing everything possible for her child. You're someone who asked for help even though it terrified you. And Sophia, she's a 3-year-old girl who deserves to hear her mother's voice. Maya looked over at her daughter, who was signing happily to herself, oblivious to the life-changing conversation happening feet away. What would you want in return? Nothing. Nobody does something like this for nothing. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. My sister was deaf, he said finally. Olivia. She lost her hearing during chemotherapy when she was 11. She died a year later. But in that year, she learned to sign and she taught me. It was our special language, our way of staying close even when everything else was falling apart. He pulled out his phone and showed Maya a photo, a young boy with familiar blue eyes standing next to a bald girl making a heart shape with her hands. She made me promise, Alexander continued, his voice rough, that if I ever had the power to help people, I would. Not for recognition, not for tax breaks, just to help. Because we knew what it felt like to be powerless, to need help we couldn't afford. Maya stared at the photo, then at Alexander, seeing him clearly for the first time. Not a distant billionaire, but a brother still grieving his sister. A person who understood exactly what she felt every time she looked at Sophia's silent world. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say yes, Alexander replied. Let me do this. Let me help Sophia here. Maya closed her eyes, 28 years of fierce independence warring with the desperate love of a mother. Every instinct screamed that she should refuse, should maintain her pride, should not accept what she couldn't repay. But then Sophia toddled over, crawling into Maya's lap. She signed. Mama, the nice man gave me fun toys. Can we say thank you? Maya looked down at her daughter's perfect face, at the intelligence shining in those dark eyes, at all the potential trapped in silence. She thought about what Sophia's life could be with hearing, the laughter she could share, the songs she could sing, the sound of I love you, instead of just the gesture. She looked back up at Alexander Sterling, this stranger who'd become their miracle. Yes, she whispered. Yes. Thank you, God. Thank you so much. And for the first time in 3 years, Maya Rodriguez let herself believe that everything might actually be okay. The next 6 weeks passed in a blur of medical appointments, preoperative assessments, and therapy consultations. Alexander had been true to his word. Dr. Patricia Chin, the region's most renowned cochlear implant surgeon, had fit Sophia into her schedule with remarkable speed. But beyond just funding the surgery, Alexander had done something Maya never expected. He'd stayed involved. He showed up to appointments, asking questions Maya hadn't thought to ask, taking notes on his phone, researching late into the night to understand every aspect of Sophia's case. At first, Maya found it overwhelming. She wasn't used to having anyone share the burden of Sophia's care. But gradually, she began to rely on his presence, to appreciate having someone who cared as much as she did about getting everything right. You don't have to do this, Maya told him after one particularly long audiology appointment. They were sitting in his car in the hospital parking lot. Alexander had insisted on driving them to all the appointments, claiming it was more efficient than them taking 3 buses. Sophia was asleep in her car seat in the back, exhausted from 2 hours of testing. Do what? Alexander asked, looking up from the notes he'd been reviewing. All of this. You've already done more than anyone could ask. You don't have to come to every appointment, learn all this technical information, spend your valuable time. Maya, do you know what I did last Tuesday? Alexander interrupted. She shook her head. I sat in a conference room for 4 hours discussing the optimal placement of advertising pixels on a mobile interface. 4 hours of my valuable time debating something that ultimately matters very little in the grand scheme of life. He looked back at Sophia, sleeping peacefully. This, helping Sophia, learning about how we can give her the best possible outcome, this actually matters. This is the most important thing I've done in months. Maya felt her throat tighten. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone more distant.
Detached.
Someone who would write a check and feel good about themselves and move on. Alexander smiled sadly. I tried that approach for years. After my sister died, after I made my first fortune, I donated millions to various causes. All very proper, all through the right channels, all impersonal and tax-deductible. And it felt hollow, like I was just moving money around, not actually touching lives. When did that change? Last month, in a hallway at 4:47 a.m., when a cleaning woman asked me for help and looked at me like I was her last hope. He met her eyes. You changed it, Maya. You and Sophia reminded me why I wanted power in the first place, not to have it, but to use it. Before Maya could respond, Sophia stirred in the back seat, signing sleepily. Mama, I'm hungry. We'll get you something soon, sweetheart. Maya signed back. Actually, Alexander said, starting the car, I know a place nearby that makes excellent grilled cheese sandwiches. Would you two like to get lunch? My treat. Maya started to protest. He'd already done so much, but Sophia was signing, yes please, enthusiastically, and Maya found she didn't want to say no. She was tired of always saying no, of always denying herself and Sophia's small pleasures because every penny had to be saved. Okay, she agreed. But next time, lunch is on me. Alexander grinned.
Deal.
The restaurant was a small family-owned place tucked into a neighborhood Maya had never visited. Nothing fancy, but warm and welcoming. Sophia delighted in the crayons the waitress brought, drawing elaborate pictures while they waited for food. Can I ask you something? Maya said, watching Alexander help Sophia open a particularly stubborn crayon package. Anything. Why did you learn sign language? Not just those few signs from your sister. You've been taking lessons, haven't you? I noticed you're getting much better. Alexander looked slightly embarrassed. I hired a tutor. I wanted to be able to communicate with Sophia directly, not always through you. Maya's heart constricted. That's the kindest thing anyone has ever done for her. She's a remarkable kid. She deserves people who will meet her in her world, not always make her adapt to ours. Their food arrived, and Sophia immediately dug into her grilled cheese with a singular focus only a 3-year-old could muster. Maya watched her daughter eat, then looked at Alexander, who was smiling at something Sophia had signed about the very yellow cheese. Can I ask you something else? Maya ventured. Of course. What happens after? After the surgery, after the therapy, after Sophia can hear? She took a shaky breath. Do we just go back to our separate lives? Do you go back to being the billionaire in the penthouse and I go back to being the woman who cleans it? The question hung between them, laden with all the unspoken complexity of the past 6 weeks. Because somewhere along the way, between medical appointments and late-night text conversations about Sophia's progress, between shared meals and signed conversations, they'd become something that didn't fit neatly into their respective worlds. Alexander set down his coffee carefully. What do you want to happen? That's not fair, Maya said quietly. You know what I want doesn't matter. Our lives are too different. You live in a world I can't even imagine, and I have nothing to offer you except honesty, and kindness, and a perspective I desperately needed. Alexander leaned forward. Maya, in the past 6 weeks, you've taught me more about what matters than I've learned in the past 6 years. You've shown me what real courage looks like, what real love looks like. Being with you and Sophia, it's the only time I feel like myself instead of Alexander Sterling, CEO. But I'm a maid, Maya whispered. I didn't even finish college. I have a 3-year-old daughter and no savings and no prospects. What kind of future could we possibly? We're friends, Alexander interrupted gently. That's what we are right now, and that's enough. I don't know what the future holds, Maya. But I know I don't want to go back to a life where you and Sophia aren't in it. Do you? Maya looked at Sophia, who was showing Alexander her crayon drawing, a picture of 3 stick figures holding hands. When Alexander asked who they were, Sophia signed, "That's Mama, that's me, and that's Alexander. We're family." Maya's breath caught. She hadn't taught Sophia to say that. The little girl had decided it on her own. "No," Maya admitted. "I don't want to go back either. But I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of getting used to this. Of Sophia getting attached. Of building a life that depends on your kindness. And then—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "And then what? I'll disappear?" Alexander reached across the table, stopping just short of taking her hand. "Maya, I'm not going anywhere. Whatever this is, whatever it becomes, I'm committed. To Sophia's surgery, yes, but also to being in her life. In both your lives. If you'll let me." "Why?" Maya asked, tears threatening. "Why would you want to tie yourself to us? You could have anyone. You could have a perfect life with someone who fits your world." "My sister used to sign something to me," Alexander said softly. He made the gestures as he spoke. "The right people don't fit your life. They change it." He looked at Maya steadily. "You and Sophia changed my life. Why would I want to go back?" Maya finally let him take her hand. It felt right, his palm warm against hers, his thumb brushing gently over her knuckles. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "I don't know how to let someone help without feeling like I'm losing myself." "Then we'll figure out together," Alexander said. "No expectations, no pressure. Just let me be here. Let me be part of this." Sophia, oblivious to the profound conversation, finished her sandwich and signed to them both. "Can we get ice cream?" Alexander said, "He knows a place with purple ice cream." Maya laughed through her tears. "You're spoiling her." "Guilty," Alexander admitted, signing to Sophia. "Yes, we can get purple ice cream. But only if your mama agrees." Sophia turned pleading eyes to Maya, her hands forming the sign for please, over and over with dramatic emphasis. "How can I say no to that face?" Maya sighed, then grew serious. "But Alexander, we need to talk about boundaries. I can't let you keep paying for everything. I need to contribute. I need to feel like—" "You're Sophia's mother," Alexander said firmly. "That's not a small thing. You've kept her alive, happy, and thriving for 3 years on your own. You've worked yourself to exhaustion to give her everything you could. Your contribution is immeasurable. But how about this?" Alexander proposed. "After the surgery, after Sophia's recovery, let's reassess. Let me get you both through this, and then we'll figure out what an equitable partnership looks like. Deal?" Maya wanted to argue, but the truth was she was exhausted. Exhausted from fighting, from struggling, from carrying everything alone. Maybe it was okay to lean on someone. Maybe accepting help didn't make her weak. "Deal," she agreed quietly. "But I'm paying for the purple ice cream." Alexander laughed. "Absolutely not." They argued about it good-naturedly all the way to the ice cream shop, Sophia signing her encouragement to whoever was winning at any given moment. By the time they got there, they'd compromised. Maya would pay for the ice cream, Alexander would pay for the fancy toppings. As they sat outside the shop, watching Sophia devour her purple ice cream with rainbow sprinkles, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not just the absence of immediate crisis, but genuine, deep peace. The knowledge that she wasn't alone anymore, that someone else cared about Sophia as much as she did. 2 more weeks, Alexander said quietly, watching Sophia sign happily about how the purple tastes like happy clouds. 2 more weeks, Maya echoed. In 14 days, Sophia would go into surgery. In 14 days, everything would change. "Are you ready?" Alexander asked. Maya looked at her daughter, at this miracle of a child who taught her the true meaning of unconditional love. Then she looked at Alexander, this man who'd appeared in her life, like an answer to prayer she'd been too afraid to speak aloud. "With you here," she said softly.
"Yes."
"I'm ready." Alexander smiled, and in that moment, Maya understood that whatever happened with the surgery, whatever the future held, they would face it together. She wasn't alone anymore. Sophia wasn't alone anymore. And that made all the difference. The morning of Sophia's surgery arrived with unseasonable warmth for late November in Chicago. Maya had barely slept, spending most of the night watching her daughter sleep, memorizing the peaceful expression on her face, praying harder than she'd ever prayed for anything. Alexander had texted her at 4 a.m. "I know you're awake. I'm here if you need to talk." They'd ended up on the phone for an hour, Alexander's calm voice talking her through her fears, reminding her of Dr. Chen's success rates, of Sophia's perfect health, of all the reasons the surgery would change their lives for the better. Now, at 6 a.m., they sat in the preoperative area of Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Sophia, who couldn't eat before surgery, was cranky and confused about why her mother kept crying. Maya held her daughter close, signing the same message over and over. "I love you. You're so brave. Everything will be wonderful." Alexander sat beside them, one hand on Maya's shoulder, occasionally signing encouraging messages to Sophia. He'd shown up at 5:30 a.m. despite Maya telling him he didn't need to come so early. He wore jeans and a Northwestern sweatshirt, having apparently abandoned all pretense of billionaire formality for the day. "Ms. Rodriguez?" A nurse appeared with a warm smile. "We're almost ready for Sophia. Dr. Chen would like to speak with you first." Dr. Chen appeared moments later, projecting calm confidence. "Good morning, Sophia," she signed, then spoke to Maya. "How are we feeling?" "Terrified," Maya admitted. "But ready." "That's completely normal. I want to review the procedure one more time, and then we'll get started." Dr. Chen went through each step, the anesthesia, the bilateral implantation, the expected 3-hour duration, the overnight observation. She'll be groggy when she wakes up, possibly nauseous from the anesthesia. But there should be minimal pain. The implants won't be activated for 4 weeks, so she won't hear anything immediately. That activation appointment will be the big moment. Maya nodded, clutching Sophia tighter. "And the risks are minimal as we've discussed. But I won't lie to you, any surgery carries some risk. What I can tell you is that I've performed this procedure over 300 times, and Sophia is an ideal candidate. I have every expectation of a perfect outcome." "Thank you," Maya whispered. "Thank you for fitting us in, for giving her this chance." Dr. Chen glanced at Alexander. "Thank Mr. Sterling." He was quite persuasive about Sophia's case being a priority. Before Maya could process that, another nurse arrived. "We're ready for Sophia now." The next moment was the hardest of Maya's life. She had to hand her daughter, her whole world, over to strangers who would put her to sleep and cut into her skull. Sophia, sensing something was wrong, clung to Maya's neck, signing frantically. "Mama, don't leave me. I'm scared." "I'll be right here when you wake up," Maya signed, her hands shaking. "I promise. The doctors are going to help you, sweetheart. They're going to make it so you can hear Mama's voice." Sophia pulled back, looking at her mother with wide eyes. "You can talk to me with sounds?" "Yes, baby. When you wake up and get better, I'll be able to talk to you with sounds. Would you like that?" Sophia considered this, then nodded slowly. "Will it hurt?" "You'll be sleeping. You won't feel anything. And when you wake up, I'll be right there." The nurse held out her arms. "We have to go now, sweetheart. But your mama is right. She'll be here when you wake up." Sophia kissed Maya's cheek, then signed, "I love you, Mama. Don't cry." And then she was gone, disappearing through the double doors with the nurse, and Maya collapsed into Alexander's arms, sobbing. He held her tightly, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring reassurances she couldn't quite hear over her own crying. When she finally pulled back, embarrassed, he handed her tissues without comment. "I'm sorry," she managed. "I'm a mess." "You're a mother watching her child go into surgery. You're allowed to be a mess." He guided her to the waiting room, where he'd apparently arranged for privacy. They had the whole section to themselves. Come on. We have 3 hours to kill. Those 3 hours were the longest of Maya's life. Alexander tried to distract her with conversation, with food she couldn't eat, with updates from his assistant about work things that didn't matter. Finally, she just leaned against him, and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders, and they sat in silence. "Can I tell you something?" Maya said quietly. "Anything." "I've been doing everything alone for so long that I forgot what it felt like to have someone share the burden. Even when Sophia's father was around, before he left, I still felt alone. He never." She trailed off, struggling for words. "He never showed up." "Not really. But you've been here for every appointment, every moment." "Why?" Alexander was quiet for a long time. "Because I know what it's like to love someone and not be able to help them. To watch them suffer and feel powerless. And I promised myself if I ever had the power to change that for someone else, I would." "Your sister." "Olivia," he confirmed. "But it's more than that now. Somewhere along the way, this stopped being about a promise I made to a ghost. It became about you and Sophia, about being part of something real." Before Maya could respond, Dr. Chin appeared in the doorway, still in her surgical scrubs. Maya's heart stopped. "It's done," Dr. Chin said with a smile. "Sophia did beautifully. The surgery was textbook perfect. Both implants are in ideal position. No complications whatsoever. She's in recovery now, just starting to wake up." Maya's legs nearly gave out. Alexander steadied her, his own relief palpable. "Can I see her?" Maya asked. "In about 20 minutes. We want to make sure she's stable first. But I want you to know, this was one of the smoothest procedures I've ever performed. Sophia's going to do wonderfully." After Dr. Chin left, Maya turned to Alexander and threw her arms around his neck. "She's okay. She's okay." "She's okay," he echoed, holding her close. "I told you she would be." 20 minutes later, a nurse led them to Sophia's recovery room. The little girl was awake but groggy, her head wrapped in bandages, looking small and vulnerable in the hospital bed. When she saw Maya, tears filled her eyes. Maya rushed to her side, carefully avoiding the 4 and monitors. "I'm here, baby. Mama's here." Sophia's hands moved weakly, signing. "It's done?" "It's done. You were so brave. The doctor says you did perfectly." "It hurts a little," Sophia admitted. "I know, sweetheart. But it will get better soon. And in a few weeks, something amazing is going to happen." Sophia's eyes drifted to Alexander, who stood at the foot of the bed. She signed to him. "You stayed?" "Of course I stayed." Alexander signed back. "I wanted to make sure you were okay." "Thank you." Sophia signed, then her eyes fluttered closed again, exhaustion claiming her. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of monitoring, pain management, and gradual recovery. Alexander never left, sleeping in an uncomfortable chair in Sophia's room, fetching coffee for Maya, entertaining Sophia with silent movies when she felt well enough to watch. By the time they were cleared to go home, Maya felt like she'd been through a war. But Sophia was healing beautifully, already demanding to play with her toys, already making plans for what she'd do when she could hear Mama. Alexander drove them home to Maya's small apartment, the first time he'd seen where she actually lived. Maya watched him take in the cramped space, the second-hand furniture, the way she'd tried so hard to make it cheerful despite the peeling paint and questionable heating. "It's not much," she said defensively. "It's full of love," Alexander replied simply. "That's everything." He helped get Sophia settled on the couch with her favorite blanket and cartoons playing with subtitles. Then he turned to Maya with an expression she couldn't quite read. "What?" she asked. "I've been thinking," he said carefully, "about what happens next. About the activation appointment in 4 weeks, about the therapy Sophia will need, about how you're going to manage all of this while working 3 jobs. Maya's defenses went up immediately. "I'll figure it out," I always do. I know you will. But what if you didn't have to? What if there was another option? Alexander, we've talked about this. I can't keep accepting. What if you came to work for me? He interrupted. Maya blinked. What? Not as a cleaner. As Sophia's care coordinator. Someone who manages her medical appointments, her therapy sessions, her educational needs as she learns to hear. It would be a full-time position with full benefits, good salary, and flexible hours so you can be with her when she needs you. That's not a real job, Maya protested. That's just you taking care of us with extra steps. It's absolutely a real job. Do you know how much time I've spent in the last 6 weeks coordinating Sophia's care? It's been practically a full-time job already, and it's only going to get more complex after activation. I need someone who knows Sophia, who understands her needs, who can advocate for her. Who better than her mother? Maya wanted to refuse, to maintain her independence, to keep the wall between charity and employment firmly in place. But the truth was she was exhausted. The thought of going back to 3 jobs, of trying to balance Sophia's intensive therapy schedule with night shifts and weekend work, made her want to cry. What would the salary be? She asked quietly. Alexander named a figure that made Maya's eyes widen. It was more than her 3 jobs combined. Enough to save, to build a future, to give Sophia stability. That's too much, she protested. It's market rate for a specialized care coordinator. Actually, it's slightly below market rate. But, Maya, Alexander said gently, let me do this. Not as charity, but as a genuine job offer. You'd be working for Sterling Enterprises with a real contract, real responsibilities, real professional standing. The only difference is that your client would be Sophia, and you'd be helping me manage her care. Maya looked at her daughter, sleeping peacefully on the couch, her head still wrapped in bandages. She thought about the activation appointment in 4 weeks, about the months of therapy that would follow, about all the appointments and adjustments and learning Sophia would need. If I say yes, she said slowly, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me this is real. Promise me you won't fire me or change the terms if whatever this is between us doesn't work out. Promise me Sophia's care won't be affected by our personal relationship. Alexander met her eyes steadily. I promise. This is a legitimate job offer that stands regardless of what happens between us personally. You'd have a contract, protections, everything any employee would have. Okay, Maya whispered. Okay, yes. I accept. Alexander smiled, but before he could respond, Sophia stirred on the couch, signing sleepily. Mama, when can I hear you? For more weeks, baby. Maya signed back, moving to sit beside her daughter. For weeks, and then everything changes. But as Alexander sat down on Sophia's other side, the 3 of them squeezed together on Maya's second-hand couch in her cramped apartment, Maya realized that everything had already changed. For weeks later, they returned to Dr. Chen's office for the activation appointment. Sophia, now fully healed, was excited but nervous. She'd been practicing with the audiologist, learning what to expect, but the reality of actually hearing for the first time was overwhelming even for adults to imagine. The whole Sterling family had come, not just Alexander, but his parents, whom he'd insisted Maya meet. They'd been warm and welcoming, with his mother signing, "Welcome to the family," before Maya could even process what that might mean. Dr. Chen brought them into a special room designed for activations. Sophia sat in a chair, looking tiny and brave, while the audiologist made final adjustments to the external processors. Are we ready? The audiologist asked. Maya knelt in front of Sophia, signing. Are you ready, sweetheart? Sophia nodded, then signed. Will it be scary? It might be strange at first, but Mama will be right here. And you can tell us if you need a break, okay? Okay. The audiologist flipped the switch, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then Sophia's eyes went wide. Her hand flew to the processor on her ear. What is that? She signed frantically. That sound. Maya signed back, tears already streaming down her face. That's what the world sounds like. The audiologist spoke in a gentle voice. Sophia, can you hear me? Sophia's mouth opened in shock. She pointed at the audiologist, then at her own ears. That's right, Maya said out loud for the first time, knowing her daughter could hear her. That's her voice. She's talking to you. Sophia stared at her mother. Mama? Is that you? Yes, baby. This is my voice. And Sophia burst into tears, reaching for Maya, overwhelmed by the sudden symphony of sound that had been silent her entire life. Maya held her close, whispering every word of love she'd been saving for 3 years. I love you, Sophia. I love you so much.
Can you hear me?
I love you. I hear you, Mama, Sophia sobbed. I hear you. Behind them, Alexander watched with tears running down his face, his mother clutching his father's hand. This was what power was for, he thought. Not boardrooms or bottom lines, but this moment of pure joy, this child hearing her mother's voice for the first time. It took nearly an hour for Sophia to calm down enough to continue the appointment. Every sound was a miracle. The audiologist's voice, Dr. Chen's congratulations, her own laughter. She made her mother repeat, I love you 17 times, delighted by the sound of the words that had only been gestures before. Finally, overwhelmed and exhausted, Sophia signed to Alexander. What does your voice sound like? Alexander knelt beside her chair. Hi, Sophia. It's me, Alexander. Sophia's face lit up with wonder. You sound nice. Like soft thunder. Everyone laughed, and Sophia laughed too, then stopped, amazed by the sound of her own laughter. As they left the hospital that day, Sophia wearing her new processors, chattering about every sound she heard, Maya pulled Alexander aside. Thank you, she said simply. For all of this. For changing our lives. Thank you for letting me, Alexander replied. For trusting me with something so precious. I think. Maya hesitated, then continued. I think I might be falling in love with you. Alexander smiled, the kind of smile that transformed his entire face. I think I've been in love with you since that morning in the hallway when you asked for help and looked at me like I was your last hope. That was only 2 months ago. Some things you just know. Sophia tugged on both their hands. Why are you talking quiet? I want to hear everything. They laughed, and Sophia laughed with them, and somewhere in that moment, they became something more than a billionaire, and a maid, and a deaf child who needed help. They became a family. 6 months later, Alexander and Maya got married in a small ceremony with Sophia as the flower girl. The 3-year-old's speech was still developing, but she insisted on making a toast, her words slightly slurred but unmistakably clear. Thank you for giving me ears and a daddy. I love you both very much. And when Maya signed, I love you to her daughter before bed that night, a habit she would never break, Sophia could respond not just with her hands, but with words. I love you too, Mama. And I love hearing you say it. It was, Maya thought as she tucked her daughter in, the most beautiful sound in the world. The end.